Hello everyone, Myzzrym here, bringing you today episode 3 of Advanced Mechanics. It's not going to be a hero, it's going to be a focus on Purge through Diffusal Blade or Dispel magic from the Storm Panda. So what is Purge? Purge is an ability in two parts. First part is, if you use it on an enemy, it will slow his attack speed and movement speed, usually very strong upfront, and then over the duration of the effect, your enemy will gradually regain his movement speed and attack speed. The second part, and this is what's interesting, is if you use it on an enemy, it will dispel his buffs. If you use it on you or yourself or an ally, it will dispel your debuffs. Now, if you use it on an ally or yourself, you're not going to slow your ally or yourself. It's only if you use it on an enemy. There are three main sources of Purge in Dota 2. There's the Diffusal Blade, which is an item, the Shadow Demon's Ultimate, Demonic Purge, and also there's a small creep in the jungle called the Satyr Trickster, who has Purge as an active ability. There's also a very funny passive by Razor called Unstable Current, which basically, whenever there's an enemy hero that casts a spell on Razor, he will purge him for a small duration. And lastly, there's the Storm aspect of Brewmaster, as we could see in the last video, that has Dispel magic. So why did I decide to make a video on Purge? Well, Purge is supposed to dispel buffs on your enemy and debuffs on your allies, but there are exceptions, and you will see that in this video, there are a lot of exceptions. In fact, there are so many exceptions that I went over each and every hero to make sure what was and what wasn't dispelled by Purge. So it will be a very long list, and not every example will be shown visually. If I don't mention an ability, just consider that it doesn't get purged. One thing that I wanted to mention before starting is that you cannot purge stuns, which might seem obvious for most of the players, but for new players out there, it might seem very weird why you could, for example, purge Hex but not stuns. For spells that have lingering slow as secondary effects, for example Conquest Torrent, or Slaughter's Crush, or even Huskar's Ultimate, all of these, if you use the Diffusal Blade, you will take away the slow component. I will try to only talk about the most relevant things, because I actually found some very specific stuff, like Dragon Knight's Dragon Form. If you get attacked by the Dragon Form that has poison, you can dispel with Purge the poison DPS that's on you. But this is really not worth remembering, right? So let's start with the Radiant Strength heroes. I first wanted to point out the only exception I found in between Dispel Magic from the Storm Panda and Diffusal Blade's Purge. It's with Omni Knight's Repel. Omni Knight's Repel can get dispelled by Purge from Diffusal Blade, but for some reason Dispel Magic from the Storm Panda doesn't work on it. So if anyone knows why it's this way, I would actually appreciate if you could send me a message to explain to me. So Omni Knight, you can dispel Repel with a Diffusal Blade, and also that makes Brewmaster a very good counter to Omni Knight, because Guardian Angel can get dispelled too. So the Storm Spirit has an AoE dispel magic that will allow you to absolutely nullify the Guardian Angel if they're not placing themselves well. Brewmaster, you can dispel Drunken Haze. You can actually dispel your own Cyclone, but you can't dispel the enemy Cyclone. So be careful, if a Rubik steals your ultimate, you won't be able to dispel his Cyclones. Trent, you will be able to dispel everything from him. Nature Guys, Leech Seed, Living Armor, Overgrowth, everything get dispelled. Wisp is actually a very, very strange thing I actually found. If you use your Dispel Magic or Purge on Wisp, his spirits, if they're out, they will explode. Huskar, Inner Vitality, you can dispel it, and Flaming Spear, you can dispel the stacks down to 1 on your hero. Earthshaker, you can dispel the Enchant Totem, and Sven, you can't dispel anything. Warcry, God Strength, they all go through the Purge, so be careful around this hero. So now over to the Dire Strength heroes. Axe, you cannot dispel Call, nor can you dispel Batter Hunger. Sand King, you can dispel Sandstorm, but you can't obviously do anything about Epicenter. Slaughter, you can dispel Amplify damage. So if you're a Rikimaru with a Diffusal Blade, please use the Diffusal Blade to purge away the Amplify damage before running away. Tide, you can dispel the Gush and the Anchor Smash secondary effects, such as the slow, the minus armor, and the minus damage. Skeleton King, you can also purge the Hellfire Blast, slow, and DPS that lingers after the stun. Next, you can't purge the Rage because he's immune to magic while in Rage. You can dispel the Open Wound, which is something different from Dota 1. Night Stalker, you can dispel both the Void and the Crippling Fear. Doom, you can't dispel Doom. Spirit Breaker, you can't do anything about him. Lycan, you can dispel Hole. And Dying, you can't dispel Decay. So if he's stacking the minus strength on you and he's stacking plus strength on himself, you cannot do anything about it. Magnus, you can actually dispel also the Empower, which gives him a lot of damage. So Radiant Agility now, Drow Ranger, you can dispel the Frost Arrow as well as Silence. In fact, you can dispel all kind of Silence, so Silence is kind of screwed against Dispel Magic. Mirana, you can't dispel the Leap bonus movement speed and the Moonlight Shadow, so the buff will still linger on, and if you use Dispel on someone, he will still turn invisible again. Phantom Lancer, you can't dispel the Double Walk. Rikimaru, you can't dispel his ultimate. Rikimaru, actually, if you remember, you can actually make him visible if you silence him, because the ultimate won't work. But Purge doesn't work this way with his ultimate. He will still turn invisible. Temporary Assassin, Refraction, you can't dispel it. Meld, you can actually dispel it, so she will go out of invisibility. And the Trap Slow, you can also dispel that. Bounty Hunter, you can dispel Track. Ursa Warrior, you can dispel the Earthshock Slow. You can't dispel the Overpower, but something really interesting to know is you can dispel on yourself the first swipe count. So if you use the Diffusal Blade on yourself when Ursa is focusing on you, it will reset his first swipe count. You can also dispel the Enrage, which is on him. Gyrocopter, you can't dispel his Flak Cannon buff. Lone Druid, you can dispel Rabbit, Battle Cry, and also you can dispel Entangling Root, so if you're rooted by the bear, you use it on yourself and you can run away. Naga Siren, you can dispel the Miner's Armor from Riptide, but you can't dispel the Nets, so you won't be able to run away from Ensnare. Dire Agility now, Bloodseeker, you can dispel Beldrage, you cannot dispel Rupture. Razor, you cannot dispel anything about him. Venomancer, you cannot dispel anything about him either. And in fact, I realized that most poison theme attack you cannot dispel, which is quite funny. PA, you can dispel the slow from the dagger. You can also dispel her added attack speed when she used the Phantom Strike, if you actually purge her at the right moment. Viper, another poison themed hero, you cannot dispel anything about her. Clanks, you can dispel the Strafe, you cannot dispel his ultimate bonus. Brood, you can dispel her ultimate, the Insatiable Hunger. Spectre, you can dispel the Dagger. Meepo, you can dispel the Earthbind and the Geostrike, so, unlike Naga and Snare, you can dispel the net from Meepo. Nyx Assassin, you cannot dispel his Spiked Carapace. So Radiant Intelligence hero now, Crystal Maiden, you can dispel the Nova, the Frostbite, Puck, you can dispel the Waning Rift Silence. The Dream Call, actually, if you try to dispel, you will lose the icon, but you will still get stunned if you walk away from the tether. Storm Spirit, you can dispel the Overload. Windrunner, you cannot dispel the Windrun nor the Focus Fire. Lina, you cannot dispel the Fear Soul. Shadow Shaman, you can dispel the Hex, but not the Shackle. Tinker, you can dispel the Laser, a blind debuff. Enchantress, you can dispel the Enchant Slow, and also if you use it, the Diffusal Blade on an Enchantress creep, the creep will die instantly. You cannot dispel the Nature's Attendant though. Jakiro, you can dispel the slow from the Liquid Fire and the Dual Breath. It will also take away the damage over time. Chen, you can purge the Penance, and also it will work the same way with the Enchantress creep as with the Tram creeps. You will one-shot them with the Diffusal Blade. Silencer, you can dispel the Curse of the Silence, also the Last Word, and also Global Silence. Ogre Magi, you can dispel the Ignite, the Bloodlust. Rubik, you can dispel the Telekinesis. If you use it on an ally that's in the air, he will land immediately, and he will not stun his ally while landing. Fade Bolt, also you can dispel the minus damage. And Disruptor, you cannot dispel anything. Thunder and Glimpse will still take effect. And Keeper of the Light, you can dispel the Mana Leak and also the Blinding Light. So to finish the heroes, now onto the Dire Intelligence heroes. Bane, you cannot dispel anything about him. Enfeeble, Nightmare, Fiend's Grip, it's not gonna work. Lich, you can dispel his slows. Lion, you can dispel the Hex. Witch Doctor, you cannot dispel the Maledict. Enigma, you can dispel the Malefice. Warlock, you cannot dispel the Fatal Bounce. You cannot dispel the Shadow Word. You can dispel the Upheaval, but since you're still in the AoE, you'll probably be slowed again. And also, you will one-shot the Golem with the Diffusal Blade. So if you see a Warlock in the enemy team, get a Diffusal Blade. That's free gold for you every time you use it. Queen of Pain, you cannot dispel the Shadow Strike. Again, poison. Death Prophet, you can dispel the Silence. Pugna, you can dispel the Decrepify. Dazzle, you can dispel the Poison, but not the Grave, the Shallow Grave, and not the Weave. Shadow Demon, you can dispel his Poison, but not the Soul Catcher, not his ultimate, the Purge. Bat Rider, you can dispel his Napalm stack. Ancient Apparition, you can dispel the Cold Feet if you use it on yourself. You can dispel the Ice Blast, so this might save a lot of lives. Keep this in mind. Chilling Touch, you cannot dispel this. Invoker, you can dispel the Cold Snap. You cannot dispel the Deafening Blast, Meteor, Alacrity, Tornado, Ghost Walk. All of this you cannot dispel. Darkseer, you can dispel the Surge, but not the Iron Shell and Visage. You can dispel the Grave Chill either on you or him, because it's working two-part. And it's not over yet, we still have the items to go over. So what cannot get dispelled? Shadow Amulet, Shadow Blade, Blade Mail, and Yule Scepter. Of course, also the the Abyssal Blade, because it's a stun and you cannot dispel stun again. And all the others will get dispelled. So Mjolnir Lightning Shield will get dispelled. The Pipe bonus will get dispelled. The Disarm from the Heaven's Harbolt, you can dispel this. Desolators minus armor, you can dispel this. Ghost Scepter, you can dispel this. Diffusal Blade, you can actually use the Diffusal Blade to purge a purge, which is kind of weird. Dust, you can dispel this. So again, if you're Rikimaru, you're running away, purge yourself if you have dust on you. Drum of Endurance, you can dispel the buff. Urn of Shadow, you can dispel either the damage over time on you or the heal over time on the enemy. Orchid, you can dispel the silence. Veil of Discord, you can dispel the minus, the minus magic armor. Medallion of Courage, you can dispel the minus armor as well. Mechanism, you can dispel the little bonus aura that you get when you pop it, which is giving +2 armor to everyone, but it's really nothing. Road of Athos, you can dispel the slow. Mask of Madness, you can actually dispel the buff, so if someone used Mask of Madness and go on you, you can actually dispel this. Satanic, the same, you can dispel the Satanic buff. The Sight of Vice, you can dispel it, because as I told you before with the Lion and the Rasta, you can dispel the Hex. And Shiva's Sword, you can also dispel the slow. So I think we covered everything now. And to sum it up, just remember that most spells that have secondary components such as slows or minus armor or all of these, you can actually dispel with the Diffusal Blade. All the spells that have, kind of like poison theme attacked, such as the Venomancer, such as the Viper, such as the Queen of Pain, the Shadow Strike, those cannot get cancelled. Most of the items can get purged as well. And finally, also the invisibility. You cannot purge most of the invisibility spells. So I hope I have covered everything now, and if I actually missed something, or if you have still some questions to be asked, feel free to do so. I'll try to answer my best. And I'll see you guys next time for the Morphling episode 4. Morphling, who has seen a bit of change, and for once it should be a hero not too complicated to actually make a video about. So see you guys next time, and thank you for watching. If you liked, don't forget to subscribe, it helps me a lot. And see ya!